Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness, and welcome to my tree. I love this picture behind me. It's a tree at nighttime of my friend's beautiful tree. All right, so much to talk about, but I want to try to get into flow, but I want to do a little energetic update around my own reality and to share my own perspective merging with the perspective that's been offered to me from my higher guidance team, which is a collective of energies of higher frequencies that I have access to because that is part of me. We all have access to those aspects of ourselves. So we are going through from my perspective, a very massive awakening. Surprise! Most of you are like, okay, that's not new news. For some of you, it might be new news. We may not perceive our reality as a reflection of that awakening because we're watching things that are reflecting the reality that was, because those are playing out. They are going through a process of dissolving. And I'm just seeing walking off stage, taking a bow. So what I'm hearing is we're in the final act. Now, I want to say that, and I would invite you to feel, what does that feel like? Because there are some that will feel fear around that. And myself included, I was like that. And it's not to say I still don't have fears that come up, because I do. When we have an awakening, an activation, Kundalini expression or activation, a download, an experience we can't explain, a memory that comes up that we can't explain. All of these are aspects of awakening, becoming lucid in our dream of reality. We start to see things, we start to feel things, and they're not what we're used to. Or we start to see things and feel things that we used to see, but we feel differently about them now. So on and so forth. So I'm trying to keep this as simple as I can, because Kundalini activation or ascension or all of this isn't necessarily the simplest. It's not simple. It doesn't feel simple at times. We'll put it that way. It feels very complicated. But it's just energy moving through our bodies, moving through our reality that we're perceiving, if we want to keep it simple. So how we perceive those energies is key. And how we integrate, process, and communicate with those energies is key. So with the good comes the bad and the ugly, is what the message is coming through. Because the good, the bad, and the ugly are all part of the realities that we have all been in, co-created together, and participated in from one perspective, from the all perspective. So what I'm leaning back into is the fact that many of us are looking at reality, thinking that that's reality, let's say through other people's perspectives, what in the social, right? Fill it in, news, politics, economic, etc. That is real. We're living and operating in it, but it's based on an old system that isn't real. It's hard to explain, but let me just keep going with this. So we're starting to see how ridiculous a lot of it is, because now we're holding a different perspective. Now, as we see, I'm hearing transparency through the directive, we begin to feel things about that we may not have felt before, or we may have felt before and ignored because we didn't know how to identify those feelings or emotions. I'm using feelings and emotions interchangeably, even though I know they are not the same. And I'll get into that. Maybe I'm going to touch on that briefly. And I'm also going to do a video just on that. So for now, though, let's just play with both and say, I'm feeling this. I get the feeling that things are off. Oh boy, okay. That can be our intuition. But our intuition can also be colored by our lens of perception. And let's say that as we are watching these things unfold and we're starting to realize things aren't, our rose colored glasses are starting to come off. And we're starting to go, ew, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm seeing how ugly that really was. By the way, this can be us too. We can be looking back and going, man, I really behaved ugly towards that person. Now I'm regretting it. Now I feel terrible. So these things can start to come up for us. And how we respond and react to that is what's important right now. Really important. To allow ourselves to feel that and to then respond with grace as much as possible, because that's coming up all around us. It's coming up. We're starting to interact with the astral a lot more, which everything's there. We're starting to interact with our memories. We're having a life review in the now. And a life review is what near-death experiencers talk about having all the time. So we're having that from my perspective right now. We're going to be having this. This will be a relevant conversation probably for a while, at least the next year. But that depends on us, right? Everybody's going to have that in a different way. And it depends on how long we want to go through it. Okay. So if we're having, let's say, a Kundalini activation, that will sometimes, more often than not, pull up the good, the bad, and the ugly that's inside of us. Feelings about ourselves, feelings about others, feelings about our reality and the social economic platforms, so on and so forth. So if we have a lot of fear around this because we're seeing the ugly and we're going, wow, my bubble of reality is not there anymore. I don't have the security that I once had. The message that's coming through is we never did. From that perspective, it was always a false sense of security. That was a bubble of reality that we agreed to play in that felt safe, but in actuality, it wasn't even real. That's the message that's coming through. It's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, right? So we're starting to see this unfold around us. So what I'm hearing is play with that, because unfolding, I did a video on that box opening, can feel very scary. When we access the folds, things come up that we didn't know we had access to, and we have this sense of freedom that actually doesn't feel free, because we're recognizing in the old paradigm we were never really free, which is the 3D, even though we were. Just are following what I'm put down. I'm trying to be multidimensional, very simplistic way. And now we're free to see reality in a whole other perspective, which means we're realizing we weren't necessarily free. And how we perceive that is key on how we choose to create our new reality, in which we can access the freedom that we've always had access to, but the reality structure within which we were co-creating didn't give us that access, or pretended not to give us that access, because it covered it up as if that wasn't even there. It's very much like that movie with the guy with the glasses. I think it's called something Free. That's a fun movie. It's Free. Okay. I'll have to look it up and provide the link if I can remember, but it's can't remember his name right now. Anyways, he puts the glasses on, and he takes the glasses off, and he puts the glasses on, and it's an old movie too, that I don't remember the name of. But essentially, he puts the glasses on, and he sees this other layer that was never there before, and it's kind of like behind the scenes. And I'm getting the message too. It's a little bit like Men in Black. If you guys ever seen Men in Black, so it's kind of that whole idea. Like there's this whole other reality going on that I didn't know about. So it gave us that false sense that we were, yeah, we could do this and we could do that. And that's that cube that we were held within. Now the walls are open and we're like, wow, there's the Truman Story again. I'm referring to a lot of movies. Free Guy, right? Free Guy. Not to be confused with Fall Guy, which is a funny movie. by the way. But so it's this essence of we're seeing a lot of this stuff as like, that's a green screen. Wait a minute, that's fake? Oh, well, then that means what I believed in isn't real. So that's a perfect example. But there's a lot of those examples. This is also a representation of kind of what's happening in our relationships, sometimes in our careers, right? Even beliefs that we had about ourselves. So, can we look at this with new eyes? Can we see this as an opportunity to receive the freedom that of divinity, that which is already within us, to create our reality in a true sense of freedom, where we're not conforming to what we're being fed? We're actually feeding from the true source of innate divinity that's within us, our own knowledge or template, rather than relying on someone else to give us what our parameters are. And so that's part of what I'm being shown. So as we feel these things, see these things, and this stirs our emotions, if we can really focus on that, will, if we're in a place of fear about all of that, and I'll get to the Kundalini in just a minute, we're in a fear about our future. We fear for our children. We fear for our this. We fear for that. If we're constantly feeding that, not only does it heighten the cortisol in our body and it makes all of the other activations that are happening harder because it's resistance and it's highs and lows, which we're experiencing anyways, from my perspective. We're also going to create more of that because we're opening the field to be able to be those creators that we want, that we truly want to be. So, but we're doing that, if we're doing it unconsciously, then we're creating the same thing, kind of, that we created before, but we're doing it unconsciously. So we're becoming more conscious of this all. We're being invited to feel the fear, recognize that it's coming up from within, and we're being invited not to let that color our lens of perception or to recognize when we are. So are we looking at that person with fear? Are we looking at that person with judgment? Are we looking at that person through the lens of anger? Or is that our own emotion that we're being called to recognize, acknowledge, and feel so that we can reinterpret the situation from a broader perspective that isn't through that one focus of anger, that lens, right? So I'm hearing rose-colored glasses to red-colored glasses. I see red, right? Anger. Anger's coming up a lot. Came up for me. I did a video on it. That's a challenging one to work through from love and light, right? It's not meant to be worked through love and light. It's meant to be felt. It's meant to be processed, but not projected onto someone else or projected onto our reality template that we want to create from. So that's part of the message. Those lens of perception, can we see things through new eyes? Can we look at ourselves and forgive ourselves? Can we look at ourselves and not feel angry over the decisions that we've made? And this isn't something that, of course, we're not all going to do that all the time. So I might have a day where I'm like, I am feeling angry over some of the choices I've made, or some of the choices I feel that were taken from me. And I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, maybe in my childhood. Now, I processed a lot of this 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Some people are processing this just now. So some of those things we processed a while ago can be showing up again for us now. And we might remember them as being attached to, let's say, a parent or an ex-partner or whatever it might be. But we're also being called to see that from another perspective and say, well, is there something else here? This is showing up for me again. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's attached to another emotion that I've carried with me. And so I'm being called to go into that. If we created our reality because we came from a bad upbringing, and I'm not labeling it as bad, but I'm referring back to the good, bad, and the ugly. And now we're a good person, right? But now all of a sudden we feel all of this emotion come up over our childhood being taken away from us. I'm using that as an example because a lot of people have had difficult childhoods. As we process that, we can find that we have anger with ourselves because we start to see the patterns and the choices that we made because of that childhood. That doesn't make us bad people. So we're being called to recognize that, right? That's deeper than just recognizing, oh, I did this because, oh, I have anger around not only towards them, but I have anger towards myself. Now I have anger towards the collective because they're triggering that feeling inside of me. So we're really being called to really work with that. Whew, that's a lot. And simultaneously, the activations that are coming in, the sun, the full moon, the eclipse, right? The earth changes on a quantum, the particle exchange. Like it's a lot. So we might be feeling all of that. And now we've opened up telepathically and we're hearing all these angry thoughts because other people are experiencing it too. Now we're like, oh man, now I'm really angry. So be gentle on ourselves. Be gentle with one another. This is a very soften if you can. Learn in the moment. And there's something to that, okay? So I'm just being called to really go in. What does learn mean, right? So learn, we know what it means, but be cultivated to get knowledge. I'm on Edom Online. To study, read, or think about. To follow or find the track. That's key. Ironically, it's related to track, sole of the foot. Get grounded. To hear of, to ascertain. Playing with all of these, right? I see this when I read that to get grounded, to get my boots on the ground, my feet, the arches of my feet, the sole of the foot, the sole. I love that because I even think that's a play on words. So track, right? So follow that track and then recognize the track that we're on if we continue to follow that track. Follow that thought pattern. Where is that coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Or just recognize we're feeling it and then it's not going to pull us off track where we don't learn or we don't recognize, right? We don't see the pattern. So this is all just coming up to be felt and processed. So the Kundalini will come up from the spine oftentimes and it'll move literally, energetically. It can feel like an undulation at the base of the spine. So again, I did a video recently to help move that around and I'll share that link in here if I remember. And as this comes up, the things we haven't processed also tend to come up. So I'm being called to stop for just a second. So in that moment, if we feel stuck, we're being called to redirect our energy. Sometimes focusing on the same thing, following that track, if we can't figure it out, find a different direction to come back to that. Right? We're going to park that. We're going to put a pin in it, come back to it later. That's okay too, because sometimes when we do that, we come back to whatever that issue is later, it doesn't even matter anymore. Or we don't even remember why we had it, or we don't even remember there was an issue because we've processed it by utilizing other avenues. So that's key. So really looking around us and recognizing that within this reflection of chaos in our times that we're watching change, there is an old system that is playing out in front of us. So if we can see through that, not only see the transparency in what is being exposed, but see beyond even that, see the beyond, hear the sound behind the sound, get to the root, get into the center, then we're able to create from that and not deviate back into these old patterns. So that's basically what I'm being shown in a nutshell. Um, breath work, dance, movement, art, creativity. Some of us have felt very stuck and we're being invited to work with these energies. So I was really feeling stuck and I had to it was like I was moving through sludge. So I had to reassess, acknowledge that I was feeling that way and honor it. Guess what? I'm not going to create anything right now. My creation will be taking a picture on my phone. My creation will be writing in my journal. My creation will be laying on the ground and just closing my eyes and visualizing color moving through my body. Whatever it is that works in that now moment, not having to keep going against the grain. That's really important right now, always. Okay. Many people are going to feel like they're not on solid ground, maybe because they aren't. There may be upcoming earthquakes and things like that. I'm being called to get back to the message that I was saying earlier is when we say that this is the final act, what emotion does that bring up? Do you feel like there's certain things that you maybe needed to do? Great. Does that still feel like something you need to do? Or does it feel relevant anymore? This is the final act. What do you want to bring in? What do you want to add? What do you want to just say, okay, I'm going to cut this out? Or just acknowledging this is the final act and it is what it is. I'm good where I'm at. Okay. So as these activations occur and we have these realizations and understandings, what I'm being shown is, well, I'm hearing don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So don't throw it all out. There's some of it that's still relevant to take with us. And as I go back to what do you feel about this, it's not the end. It's the end of the REM. It's not the end of the world as we know it, but it's not the end. It's only the end of what we are used to, what we were used to, what we were used to playing in and being, participating in. So that in itself can be scary because sometimes the new is equally scary or scarier than the old. Even though the old was ugly in some cases, it had a lot of beauty in it, it was comfortable. It was easy because we knew it. We thought we knew it. And that's the point. We didn't really know it. And now we're starting to know what we didn't know, and that's becoming more aware. And that can create fear and anger around that as well. Are you feeling what I'm putting down with this? So just be aware of this. A lot of people are going to be going through this. For some of you, it's like, all right, yeah, awesome, bring it on. And I say that too. And then it happens and I'm like, "Oh, holy moly. Was not expecting my response to that." So, why is that? How can I integrate this? So, that's the message. Simple message, I hope. Maybe for some. In love and light, guys. Have fun co-creating together. I invite you to go back and watch the video that I did with the meditation if you feel called. And I'm going to be doing another part on emotion versus feeling and lots of things coming up in the next few months to share with you guys. So, in love and light, namaste.